Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to set up an AngularJS application using Angular Seed. Alright, Angular Seed is basically a boilerplate for AngularJS. Alright, it gives you some basic structure. It also comes with the ability to run a web server right off the bat. Alright, so you want to go to the GitHub repository, which is github.com/angular/angular seed. And what we're going to do is just download the zip file. Alright, we'll open that up. And I'm going to create a project folder. Okay, so I'm just going to put this in my C drive inside projects. And let's create a folder and we'll call this contact list. Okay, so we just want to bring everything over. And then what we want to do is open up the package.json file. Okay, and we're going to change the name of the project. I'm going to change it to contact list, and you can change the description. Alright, feel free to change anything else you want, maybe the repository. I'm just going to get rid of that. Alright. Now, there's a lot of dependencies here. We have Bower, which is a front-end package manager, HTTP server, Jasmine, Karma. This is for testing, Protractor, Shell.js, which I'm not really sure what that is. And what we're going to do is just add to this. We're going to add Firebase. Okay, so that's what we'll use as our database. And we want the latest version, so we'll just put in an asterisk. Alright, and that should be good for now. So let's go ahead and save this, and we're going to have to go to a command line into this folder. I'm using something called git bash, which is basically just the Windows command prompt with some additional Unix tools. And if you want that, you can go to git-scm.com and you can go ahead and download that for Windows. Alright, but of course you can use the regular Windows command shell. So what we want to do now is just say npm install. We want to get all those dependencies installed. Alright, so now what we want to do is take care of the front end dependencies. So let's say Bower install. Alright, and now what we can do is we can run the server. So we want to say npm start. Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to get a simple AngularJS app set up using Angular Seed. Alright, Angular Seed is basically just a boilerplate for Angular. Alright, if we look at the file structure here, we have our main app folder, and that's going to contain our view 1 and view 2. And if we click on this, you'll see we have three things. We have the HTML, so the user interface. We have the JavaScript, which will contain things like the controller, dependency injections, things like that, and then we have the test file. Alright, so it's a nice little structure, and it also comes with a pre-built server that we can use. So it's there's a lot of different options to set up an Angular app, and this is a really good one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to download the zip file here and open that up. Alright, and I'm going to create a project folder. So I'm going to go to my C drive and then projects. And let's create a new folder, and I'm going to call it contact list. Alright, now we're going to bring everything over. Alright, and we have to open a command line into this folder. I'm using something called git bash, and there's an option here in the context menu. But of course you can use the standard Windows command prompt. If you do want this, you can get it at git-scm.com and just download it for Windows. Alright, so from here what we want to do, actually the next thing we want to do is edit the package.json file. Alright, so let's go ahead and open that up. So from here, let's change the name of the app. We'll call it contact list. Oops. Okay, and I'll change the description. And let's get rid of the repository. All right, and the dependencies here, you can see we have Bower, which is our front-end package manager. We have an HTTP server, and then Jasmine, Karma, this is for testing. All right, what I do want to do is add Firebase as a dependency. All right, because that's what we'll use for our database solution. All right, so we want the latest version, so I'm just going to put in an asterisk. All right, so let's save that. Actually, I'm going to change the version to 100. And now what we want to do is go back to our command line and say npm install. All right, so that'll get all those packages set up for us. And it might take a minute or two, so I'm going to pause it and I'll be back. Now, I also want to run Bower install because that'll take care of any front-end packages. I believe it'll run this when we run the server, but just to be sure, we'll run it now. Okay, so now what we want to do is say npm start. All right, and yeah, see, it's running npm install. So you don't have to do those two steps, but it's not going to hurt anything. All right, so it says it's running on port 8000. So let's go ahead and go to HTTP localhost :8000. All right, oops, I forgot we need to do /app. Okay, so it's not much, it doesn't look like much, but what we have is our two views. So we have view 1, which is just giving us some text, and then view 2. All right, now I'm going to open up Sublime Text. And whoops. All right, and we'll go to contact list, app, and let's take a look in view 1. Okay, so we have an HTML file, which is just the markup, the user interface. We have a JS file, which is going to include things like the module, the config and routes, and controller. And then we have a test file, which we're not going to really get into. I'm not going to get into testing. I find it very boring anyway. Now, if we look at the HTML, all we have in here is a paragraph, okay? Because the main layout is actually in index.html. This is where the head and the body tags and all that stuff goes. All the inclusion of the style sheets and JavaScripts. And you can see we also have our menu here as well. All right, this here is where the views are going to be output, okay, in this ng view. So what I want to do now is I want to implement Bootstrap. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do a Control-C to stop the server, and we're going to say Bower install Bootstrap. Okay, and then we'll run it again with npm start. And now if we look in, let's see, I might have to refresh the folders. All right. So it's not showing up here yet. I don't know why it does that, but we should have a Bower components folder. So if we go to projects, contact list, app, we have Bower components, and we should have Bootstrap. All right, so we want to make sure we include that. So let's copy this. Okay, so Bower components / Bootstrap. And then it's going to be /dist /css /bootstrap.css. Whoops. All right. So now if we save that and reload, now you can see that it's changed quite a bit as far as the styling of it. Okay, the padding's gone, the font's different, it's smaller. That's because Bootstrap is now integrated with our app. Now I'm going to get rid of this altogether, so let's go back to Sublime. Alright, and let's get rid of this menu. Alright, and then down here, oh, you can also see that there's a custom directive for the version. Alright, if we look at the application, we get version 0.1. This is coming from a custom directive. You know what, let me just go like that. Okay, and if we look in the components folder and in the version, you'll see there's a version directive. All right, so that's where we're creating that app version directive. Okay, but we're not really going to get into that, creating custom directives. So what I want to do is let's go to get bootstrap, and I just want to get a simple template. So let's go to getting started, and we want examples, and let's just grab this starter template. If we do a Control U, we can view the source, and I want to grab from the nav all the way down to the ending container. All right, and then we're going to go put that inside of the HTML file. Okay, so let's see. We don't need this. All right, and I'm going to get rid of all these comments. Okay, let's paste it right here. All right, now what I want to do is this is where the view is going to pop out, so let's cut that and let's get rid of this starter template div. All right, and we're going to create a div with a class of row. Okay, we use the Bootstrap grid system. And then we'll say div class equals call. Let's say call MD. Whoa, sorry about that. Column D12 will do for now. So 12 column div. All right, and let's paste in that view. So if we save that and let's go back to our application and reload, now we have a nice nav bar. What I do want to do is I want to get rid of this navbar fixed top class. All right, and then navbar inverse I'm going to change to default to make the navbar a light color. All right, so now you can see we still have our views showing. So what I want to do now is create our database. All right, so we're going to be using Firebase. So you want to go to firebase.com and go ahead and sign up. It's completely free for a developer account. So get that done and then we can log in. All right, and then you'll see something like this. All right, and what we want to do is create a new database or a new app, and let's call it contact list. Now the URL has to be unique, so you'll want to, this will be different than mine. I'm just going to say contact list dev 0101. All right, and take note of the URL as well. So create new app, and if we go and click on manage app, it'll take us to the interface. Now we don't have to do anything yet, but this is where our contacts will show up once we get everything done in our application. Now, since we're using Angular and Firebase, there's a tool we can use called Angular Fire, which makes things a little bit easier for us. All right, so it gives us a bunch of documentation on it, but I'm not going to really go through that. What we want to do is install it with Bower. All right, you can use Bower and NPM, I believe. Let's see if we go to docs. Yeah, I don't know exactly where it is. There's a lot of documentation. But what we'll do is go ahead and stop the server, and we're going to say Bower install Angular Fire. And let's also install Firebase with Bower. So we'll say Bower install Firebase. All right, now let's go to our index.html. We need to make sure we include those files. All right, so down at the bottom here, let's copy this. And then the placement of these is really important. We're going to go under the Angular route here. And this is where we'll include Angular Fire. So let's get rid of that. It's going to be Bower components. Let me just check it out. Okay, for some reason it doesn't refresh in here. So Bower components, Angular Fire, and then dist, and then Angular Fire JS. All right. Okay, so that's that. Is that right? Yeah, okay. And then we also want Firebase, which is right here. All right, so let's paste this underneath that. Actually, we want Firebase to be on top of Angular Fire. All right, so let's save that, and now those should be linked. And the last thing I want to include is jQuery. All right, so I'm actually going to put that at the top here. All right, we already have jQuery inside of our components. Okay, you can see right here. So let's change that to jQuery/dist/jQuery.js. All right, good. So save that. And let's also change the title here. We'll change it to contact list. All right, now what we're going to do is we don't want view 1 and view 2. I'm going to rename view 1. Okay, let's say rename, and we're going to call it contacts. All right, and for some reason it's not updating in Sublime Text. All right, if we go to the actual folder, we go in app. Okay, you can see that it was renamed to contacts. Now I also want to rename all of these files to contacts as well. So contacts.html, contacts.js, and we'll also have contacts test. All right, so let's open up contacts HTML and contacts.js. Now there's quite a few things we're going to have to change. All right, so this module will be myapp.contacts, and let's change this contacts, this. All right, and this will be contacts controller, just like that. All right, so let's save that. Now we're going to have to go into our index.html and change this right here to contacts/contacts.js. All right, and then we're going to get rid of the view 2. Okay, we don't need that. So let's get rid of that. I'm actually going to delete the whole view 2 folder. Okay, and it could give us an error, but let's go ahead and run npm start. Okay. Oops, we want to go just to app. All right. So now what I want to do is go to app.js, and we need to edit this file. All right, so let's get rid of my app version as well as view 2, and then we'll change view 1 to contacts. Okay, and then right here where it says otherwise, then we'll redirect to contacts. And since we're using Firebase, we also want to put that in there. Okay. So now we want to go to contacts.js. Now when we have a controller, we need to include what's called a scope. All right, and that's going to allow us to bind data to and from the view from the controller. Now having it like this will work, but it'll break if this is named something else. All right, and then for instance, if we use the minified Angular script, it'll rename this to something shorter to save on space, and then it'll break. So what we need to do is also include it right here, okay, in quotes. So we're just going to include scope, just like that. Okay, now we're also going to want to use Firebase, so we want to inject the Firebase array variable, just like that, and then we want to also put it in the parameters. So just to test things out, inside of the controller, we'll say console.log, we'll say controller loaded. Actually, let's say contacts controller loaded. Okay, and then we'll go and let's open up our console and reload. Okay, so this is giving us an error. Failed to instantiate module my app. Oh, it's still looking for view 1 somewhere. Let's see, where is that? Oh, it's probably in the index. No. Oh. No, where is it being included? Contacts? No. We might have to restart the server. Let's make sure everything's saved. And let's go and... Oh, it's not running. Oh, never mind. That's not the right one. I had 2 command lines open. So let's just restart this. Okay, and we'll go ahead and reload. Alright, so now we're getting contacts controller loaded. So everything's good up to this point. Let's go back to contacts.js. So what we want to do is we need to bring in a reference to our Firebase. Alright, so let's create a variable called ref. And let's set that to new. Oops, that should be a space. New Firebase. And then we want to put in the URL. So in my case, it's going to be this right here. Yours will be different. Alright, and then what we can do is go right underneath it and let's create a scope variable. So we're going to say scope.contacts. Alright, and we're going to set that to Firebase array, and we want to pass in the reference. So this will put all of the contacts inside of our scope variable, and we can actually use this in our view. Alright, but that's not going to help us right now because we have nothing here. So what I want to do is create the form to actually create a contact. So let's go into contacts HTML, and we're going to create a div, and let's give it a class of row. Alright, now this div I'm also going to give a directive called ngController. Okay, because we want to let them know that we're working in the contacts controller. So contacts, was it CTRL? Yeah, contacts controller. Alright, so now let's create a 2-column layout. What I want to do is have the form on the left side in the sidebar, and then the actual contacts table on the right. So we'll say div class equals call md. Let's do 5. Okay, that'll be the sidebar, and then we'll do the main area. That'll be call md 7. Okay, so in here, let's create the form. We'll put in h3. Say add contact. Alright, and then let's see, we'll put in, actually let me just grab a form from Get Bootstrap. Forms, is it in CSS? Yeah, let's just grab this. Oops. Okay, we'll put that like that. Okay, first field, let's put name. And we don't need the for attribute. I'll get rid of that. Type is going to be text. Okay, ID. We shouldn't need the ID. What we do need that's very important is the ng model, okay, because that's going to be what binds it to the controller. Alright, so ng model is going to be name, placeholder. Alright, so that's the name. Let's just copy that. And I'm going to get rid of everything down to the button. Alright, and then we'll paste in another field. This will be the email. Type will change to email as well. And then ng model will be email. Alright, and then we'll do the phone number. Change ng model to phone. Alright, let's see what this looks like. Alright, so there's our form. So we need to add some stuff to the form tag. We want to use ng submit. Okay, so when this form is submitted, we want to run a function. Let's call, we'll just say add contact. Alright, so we'll save that. And let's go back to our contacts.js, and we're going to create that function here. It's going to be a scope function, so we want to say scope.addContact equals function, and let's say console log adding contact. Okay, just to test it out. So let's save it, reload. And we'll just type some stuff in here. This has to be an email address. Alright, so click submit and nothing's happening. And so let's go back to the HTML, and it looks like in the form we forgot to put the parentheses for add contact. So let's see if that helps. Alright, good. So now we're getting add contact. So we know that they're connected. So what we want to do is we want to say scope.contacts, scope.contacts, and then we want to say $add. Alright, this is how we can add to Firebase. And we're going to add an object. Alright, and let's say name is going to be scope.name, email, scope.email, and phone will be scope.phone. And then what we want to do is go right after this closing parentheses, and we want to say .then, and inside here we want a function. Okay, that's going to take a parameter of ref, and what we want to do is create a variable called ID, and let's set that to ref.key. Alright, and then we'll do a little console log, and we'll say added contact, and then we can actually concat the ID, so we'll say plus ID. Alright, then we want to clear the form, or clear the scope variables rather, so we'll say scope.name is going to be equal to nothing. Same thing with email and phone. Okay. So let's save that and see what happens. Alright, so I'm going to just refresh the app. So name, we'll say John Doe, email, phone, and submit. Alright, and then down here you can see added contact, and we get the ID. If we go to our Firebase, there it is. Okay, we don't even have to reload Firebase. And you can see we have John Doe. Okay, if we want to add one more, let's say Steve Smith. We'll say S. Smith Okay, submit, and you can see now we have Steve Smith. Alright, so we can now add contacts. Next thing we want to do is we want to be able to show those contacts over here. Alright, so to do that, let's go to let's see, contacts HTML, and we're going to go to the 7-column div here, and let's put in an H3, and we'll say contacts, and what we want to do is create a table. Okay, so we're going to say table class table and table striped. Okay, and let's do our T head and T body. Okay, in the head we're going to have a table row with some table headings. Okay, so we'll say name, email, phone. Alright, and actually let's also have another one for the buttons. Alright, now in our T body we want to have our table rows, but we need them to iterate for every contact. So what we're going to do is we're going to say tr, and then we're going to use the ng repeat directive. Okay, this will allow us to loop through something. So we want to say contact in contacts. Alright, now the reason that contacts is available to us is because in the JavaScript we set scope.contacts to the Firebase array of contacts. So anything we put in scope we can access from within here because we're in the same controller which we provided up here. Alright, so what we'll do is let's say td td, and then we want contact.name. Okay, we can use these double curly braces. This one will be the email, so we'll say contact.email, and also the phone. Okay. Alright, let's just see what happens. Okay, so now you can see we have our two contacts. Alright, and if we want to add another one, let's say Jeff Williams, we'll say jwills@gmail. Submit, and there he is. Okay, it's instant. We don't have to reload the page or anything. What I want to do before we go, and we're going to make it so that we can delete them, I want to get rid of these links in the nav bar. So in our index HTML, let's just get rid of this. And then home, I'm going to have go to, actually, you know what? Instead of having it /contacts, let's make it the home page. Alright, so we can do that by going to contacts.js, and where we have our route here, /contacts, we're just going to change that to just /. Alright, so let's see what that does. Alright, so now we don't actually have to go to /contacts. So what I want to do now is put a delete button over here so we can delete contacts. Alright, so let's go to our HTML, and we want to go down here. Alright, and let's give this a class of button, and I'm sorry, btn, and then btn danger. Alright, and this is going to have an ng click. Alright, and this will be remove contact, and we're going to have to pass in contact. Okay, just like that, and let's see, actually I don't think we need this. All right. So what we want to do now is create this remove contact. So we'll go to our JS file and we'll say scope dot remove contact. All right, and that's going to, actually no, I did this wrong. We need to say scope dot remove contact equals function and pass in contact, and then we're going to do scope dot contacts dot $ remove, and then pass in contact. Okay, just like that. Let's save it and reload, and then Jeff Williams, delete, and he's gone. All right. So what I want to do now is make it so that we can edit our contacts. So we need to add a button, and what I want to happen is when we click that button, the add form will disappear and the edit form will show. All right, and then we'll be able to submit that and update. So what we want to do first is create our button. So in contacts HTML, I'm going to copy the delete button. Okay, we'll paste that in. Let's change this to edit. And let's change danger to default. And instead of remove contact, we're going to change this to show edit form. Okay, now I don't want to call this edit contact because that's not what it's going to do. When we click that, it's just going to show the edit form, and then we submit that edit form, that's when it'll call edit contact. Alright, so let's save that. Okay, now we have an edit button. So when that clicks, it's going to call show edit form. So let's go to our JS file and let's say let's say scope dot show edit form equals function. All right, and what we want to do is let's say scope dot add form show. We're going to set to false. All right, and then what we'll do is in our HTML, we'll go to our add form. I'm going to go to the div above it, and we're going to say ng show. So it'll only show if that is true. Which, what did I call it? Add form show. Okay, so this should only load if that is true. So if we save it and reload, it's going to disappear. So what we need to do is make that initially true so that it shows by default. So we'll go right here and say true. Okay, so now if we reload, all right, and if I click edit, it goes away. So in addition to it going away, we want the edit form to show. So let's create that. I'm just going to copy this entire 5-column div, and we'll paste it right underneath. And instead of add form show, this will be edit form show. And we'll change this to edit. The submit function will be edit contact. Alright, so let's save that and then go back to our JavaScript. And we want to make sure that edit form show is false to begin with. Alright, and then once we click the edit button, it'll then be true. Alright, so let's try that out. Click edit, and it changes to edit. Alright, so we also want the value to show up for whatever one we click here. So we're going to go to our show edit form, and we're going to say scope.id is going to be equal to contact.id, whatever one we click. Okay, same thing with name. Email. And phone. Alright, Alright, so let's see if that does anything. Alright, so I click Edit John and he shows up here. If I click Edit Steve, he shows up. Alright, so that's exactly what we want. Now we want to go to our edit, I think, what do we call it? Edit contact. So we need to create that. So we'll go right under Add Contact. So first thing we want to do here is let's create an ID or a variable called ID, and we want to set that to scope.id. Alright, and then we're going to create a variable called record, and we'll set that to scope.contacts.getRecord, and we want to pass in that ID. Alright. Now we want to assign our record values, so we're going to say record.name is going to equal scope.name and phone. Alright, and then finally we'll do our save. Alright, so let's say scope.contacts.$save, and then we want to pass in that record variable then pass in our function. Function's going to take that reference, and then let's just do console.log. And we'll just log ref.key. Alright, and then we want to clear the fields just like we did here. Alright, so let's save that, and let's go ahead and reload the app. Okay, we'll say Steve Smith, let's edit him, and let's change him to Dave Smith. Submit. Alright, so cannot set property name of null. Alright, so it looks like it's talking about record.name. Oh, okay. And the reason for that is right here. We have contact.id. This should actually be contact.$ID. Alright, so edit Steve, let's change him to Dave, submit, and there we go, Dave Smith. Awesome. So we now have a full CRUD application. It can create, read, update, and delete contacts. Let's go ahead and get rid of this home link. There's really no need of it. It's a single page app. So we'll just take that out. Alright, so there we go. We now have a contact list app. So feel free to edit it, maybe add some more fields or add some more functionality, whatever you'd like. I'll post the link in the description to the GitHub repository. And thanks for watching. If you could subscribe or give us a like, that'd be great. I do have a full 10 project course with Angular projects just like this, available at eduonix.com. I'll leave that link in the description as well. Alright, so thanks for watching, guys.